Appreciate everybody joining me this morning. It's an exciting morning for myself and my family. Finally getting to this step and being formally announced as the Heartlanders' next head coach and general manager. Looking forward to relocating to the area. I was fortunate last week to get out for a couple of days to check out Eastern Iowa and Coralville and, the Iowa River Landing and everything that comes around with that. And it sold me right from the first get-go. Michael Devlin and Matt, our president, have done an unbelievable job showing me around and showing the vision that they have for this organization moving forward. And, we share a lot of like-minded values, and all of us have a thirst for winning and kind of taking this program to another level. Derek did a great job, as far as last year, making the first playoffs and creating an unbelievable culture. And I'm excited to come in and build upon, what he and the rest of the staff did last season. I've got a chance to talk to, probably about 10 or 12 guys already off last year's team, and they had an unbelievable locker room last year. And I'm looking forward to coming in and bringing a little bit different of a vision, but still want to continue to build on the same foundation and culture that they've established already, and make a place where Coralville is a destination in the ECHL for hockey players that want to come and have that opportunity to win championships and move up to play at their highest level for years to come.
Chuck, you mentioned, sorry, I can't get my camera working. I apologize. You mentioned a little bit different vision. Can you expound on that a little bit, please?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is taking the group from last year and expanding on it. Again, like I said, it was a great locker room. There's a few little upgrades. I think we, have to have that ability to score a few more goals along the way. I think there was a great structure played away from the puck. But, Derek and I are two different coaches that way. So it's we have different experiences. I think we have a lot of the same beliefs as the time that we've gotten a chance to chat, kind of talk about where he's been and where I'm going. I think there's a lot of things from a culture standpoint that the players are gonna be able to embrace, similarities, expectations, from work ethic to our day to day to the process that goes about with this. It's the end goal is always to win Kelly Cups, but you have to embrace it day by day. And we're going to stay in those moments and be where our feet are is a term I use a lot, especially in the ECHL. You get a number of guys, I want to be in the American League or be in the National Hockey League. And we're going to really expand on our players being focused on being where their feet are, in that Eastern Iowa community there, building championship culture. Jack.
Hi, Chuck. Welcome to Eastern Iowa. I hope I sound okay for you. You spent some time last 7 years in the NCAA, and you spent some time in the AHL, across the bench in the front office. What made you want to come back to these two things? So, a two-part question. What made you want to come back to the ECHL, and what made you want to be at the head of the bench?
Yeah, the biggest thing coming back, I had two parameters when I was looking to make the move back to pro hockey. It was work with great people and have a chance to win. Early on in my career was always, you're chasing the National Hockey League, moving up, moving up, moving up. As I've kind of matured, I think this is going into my 27th year of coaching now. This will be my 20th year in pro coaching. That it's like I said, it's working with good people and, with Michael and Matt and getting to meet the front office. Talking with Matt Hendricks with Minnesota and their vision that they have moving forward. It was able to sell me on that coming to Eastern Iowa from that standpoint. And you're always excited, to kind of run your own show a little bit. I made the adjustment to college hockey with a young son and stuff like that. So I kind of made that little turn that way. And college hockey's gone through a lot of changes here since COVID. And for better or for worse, that situation kind of helped drive me to go back more to pro. And especially the things that the ECHL has to offer is exciting. Getting to work with young players that have, goals and aspirations like this is really looking forward to it.
Chuck, it's been a few years since you've been in the, in pro hockey and in the ECHL. I mean, will it be a little bit of an adjustment for you, or do you think that, everything you learned and the recruiting part of it, you still have those ties and everything. It'll just be, going back to what you've always known.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is you call them agents now instead of advisors. College hockey, they're all advisors, they're not agents. So I got to remember to flip that switch a little bit from that standpoint. But no, it's about relationships. I'm in the people business. It's from the fans to our staff to advisor to agents. See, I'm already starting to players. It's about, them getting to know me, me getting to know them. I'm a big believer that, culture outweighs structure. And so it's going to be selling these, young professional hockey players, on the culture that we're going to have in Eastern Iowa. It's the relationships that I have with agents all over. And fortunately for me, the last 3 years coaching Great Britain, helping coach Great Britain's men's national team, I've been working with pros. Last year I was fortunate enough to be in Czechia with the team coaching at the A pool. We opened up with a 4-2 loss to Canada. To go in and play Canada and Switzerland and Finland and Denmark and Norway and Austria and all those with all NHLers. I've still been in that environment. It's a little bit different of a game, especially with the full cage compared to the half shield. Some guys maybe in pro aren't as bold blocking shots as they might spit some chicklets after taking a puck in the tee. But at the same time, it's still the same game. It's about playing the game with passion. It's about competing. It's about that day to day, embracing the grind that comes with that, and wanting to better yourself every day. And that's what the group we're looking for here in Coralville.
Chuck, how do you hope to let's go off the ice for a second? How do you hope to generally continue the positive momentum and kind of the upward climb of fan support coming to Coralville over the last few years, where the town didn't have a hockey club, not exactly Hockey Town USA in Coralville. It's been moving up. How do you hope to continue that?
Well, I think is putting a great product on the ice. You kind of create that word of mouth a little bit. I think hockey's a sport. While any true hockey fan loves it on TV, I think really an average sports fan, once they see it live, they see the speed, the physicality. Especially in the community, that embraces a community like Eastern Iowa that embraces wrestling, embraces football, those types of things. When they see this element, they see the physicality of the sport, the speed of sport. I mean, these guys are going 26, 27 miles an hour in full collisions with walls, from that standpoint. And, I think once the people see that, they'll be hooked. I think it's growing the youth community. Last time I checked, I think the junior Heartlanders program was somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 to 180 kids. So it's continuing those grassroots efforts. It's getting out to schools, it's getting out to various community groups and things like that. Myself and our players are going to be active that way. We want the kids to be able to look up to these young men as role models, and somebody that they want to support, on and off the ice that way. So that's going to be a big part of our growth. That's continuing to identify, with the players in the streets and stuff like that. And like I said earlier, it's going to be big about our guys being where their feet are. And I think you're going to see a group that really is going to embrace and grab onto this Eastern Iowa community, and the fans will grab onto us.
I've got just one more, if I may, Chuck. Just obviously, you've been in so many places. You're a hockey lifer, I guess,
Yes.
basically. Can you just tell me what this journey has been like? From beginning to end for you, I guess, or not end, but beginning to now.
It's been a situation. I got some great advice that, you move anywhere, you outwork anybody. You kind of continue to work till your idols become your rivals. And that's kind of the journey that I've tried to take here. I enjoy the process of coaching. Wherever it's been, being able to work with young athletes, be able first and foremost to make them better people. As proud as I am of all the guys that have made the National Hockey League and things like that I've coached along the way, I'm more proud of the fact that these guys have become great fathers and husbands, and sons and things like that along the way. And that's the part of the journey that I really enjoy, and been able to stay in touch with a lot of guys. I'm getting to that age now in 27 years of coaching. I have a number of guys that are former players that are coaching, whether professionally. I have a couple of my former players are head coaches at major Division I programs, and I'm proud of those guys. From that standpoint, to see where they've come, to see their journey along the way, and feel that I've hopefully had a little piece of it, and they've taken something here or something there, and been able to build upon that. And that's what I'm looking to continue to do. When I started this journey, I looked at myself as a big brother to the players. Now I'm probably getting more of the father figure, I guess, currently, from that standpoint. But I have a lot of coaching ahead of me. I have a lot of energy ahead of me. I have a lot of desire to continue to win championships. And I enjoy the daily grind. The East Coast League isn't for everybody. That way. But you know what? In my 9 years, 5 as a head, 4 as assistant, I've always enjoyed the grind. Nothing's come easy to me. I've had a little bit of an untraditional path, as I didn't play high level pro hockey or anything like that. So I've had to, like I said, kind of forge my own way. And it's been a heck of a journey so far. I'm excited for where the future holds.
Just going off of that, can you tell me about the interview process and where the Heartlanders first came into your picture?
Matt reached out to me. I'm trying to remember. The timing's a little bit off from that standpoint, but Matt was the first one. We had a first interview. It was a great chat, just kind of talking. It was a very casual interview from the standpoint of we kind of hit it off. We had a lot of the same values, the same integrity that we believe in and doing things the right way. Then about, I want to say a week later, Matt and Michael, I met with both of them. It was a great Zoom chat. Same situation. It wasn't like regimented or anything like that. It was some just great conversations about culture and hockey and the community. It wasn't so much the X's and O's of the game. It was everything that goes along with the game. We talked about how I want to play and things like that, but we didn't get into forechecks and D zone coverage and things like that. And then Matt Hendricks reached out to me. So Matt and I chatted for a while as well. We talked a little more hockey. We talked about development. We talked about the guys that, at the East Coast League level that I coached, that worked their way up the Boston organization, Montreal, Nashville as a head coach. Proud of the guys like Dan Vladar was one of my goalies in Atlanta, who's now one of the goalies for the Calgary Flames. David DeHarnay, who played for me in Cincinnati, ended up playing for Montreal, the Rangers. And there's been a number of other guys that have kind of worked their way up from that standpoint. I want to say I think in the neighborhood of, I have a couple thousand games of players that have gone on, played for me at one point in the American League or the East Coast League, that have gone on to the NHL. So, like I said, so we just chatted about my vision, development, how I can help the Minnesota Wild take the next players from the ECHL and work their way up to playing in Minneapolis that way. And we said, then we continued to chat. I was talking with a number of other organizations and things along the way. And, Matt was like, we want to get you off the market, kind of thing. And so him and, we kind of finished up the process from that standpoint. The team was fantastic, brought me out, because I said a big thing for me was I wanted to get my feet on the ground and see people eye to eye. And, Matt and Michael spared no expense in making sure that I was comfortable, my family was comfortable with this decision, and we're so excited to get going.
Can you tell me about your family? Tell us just like kids and your spouse who's coming with you.
Yeah, so I met my wife when I was coaching in Cincinnati. So we have a 9-year-old son who's going to be very active. I've already talked to the president of the Junior Heartlanders. So my son's been skating since he was 3. He's been playing organized hockey now since he was 4. So he's excited for the move. He also plays, so besides hockey, he plays soccer as well. He's going to be going into 4th grade. My wife is very active in the community here in the Capital Region. She works for a group called the Food Pantry of the Capital District, and she works in development and helps feed over 100,000 people in the Capital District area. So, the community is big for both my wife and I. I couldn't be more proud of the work she's done here in the Capital District. And, she's looking forward to becoming part of the community, out in Eastern Iowa and being involved. And, I said, I'm excited to relocate my family out there and, become part of the community. I'm a big believer in that. I want to be active with the youth hockey community out there. And, it's a busy schedule as a head coach and GM in the ECHL, but whenever I can and things like that, I want to be part of that, and my family's excited as well.
Anything else for Chuck, guys? Jeff?
Good. Thanks, Finer.
Jack, go ahead, Jack.
Sorry, let me just jump in with one more, Chuck. And I apologize if you're repeating yourself, but I asked about the positive momentum off the ice. When it comes to new head coaches, sometimes there's a completely new culture. You need a blank slate, but the Heartlanders just made their first, playoff series. Where do you feel your role is in establishing the new culture, but not completely blowing everything up? Because it wasn't like this team needed to at the end of last year.
Yeah, I don't think I'm establishing a new culture. I think I'm building on the foundation that they had last year. The biggest message from the players that I received, and again, I haven't talked to everybody yet. I still have a number of calls to get done today, was how great the locker room was a family. I've always looked at myself as somebody that has to take 24 strangers and turn 24 strangers into a family. So, that's going to be a big part of my role in this process here. The guys did a great job last year. I couldn't get a player to say anything bad about the organization, say it the locker room, the situation. There's a lot of guys want to come back. To be honest with you, unfortunately, there's probably more guys that want to come back that will come back. So again, this isn't about being a third, just making the playoffs. This is about taking things to another level. So I believe there's a foundation of guys here that'll be part of that. And then, what I'm fortunate is I'm gonna have some tough decisions to make. And that as a coach, that's what you wanted. They're not easy decisions. They're tough decisions. And there's going to be some great people that unfortunately aren't going to be part of the organization this upcoming season. And they've raised they've helped, establish the ground floor and everything else that way. And they're always going to be Heartlanders. That's the one thing that I want to create within our culture here is that once you've been an Iowa Heartlander, you're always an Iowa Heartlander. And whether you play in the first year or you've played in the fifth year or et cetera down the line, we want guys to always feel part of that family that way. And that's how I kind of want to run this team. Like I said, there's a great foundation of guys. And, like I said, I'm excited to get to know them, see who the leaders are. I think the biggest thing that for me is nothing's given. So just because, and I talked to Yuki about this already. I said, he's a guy that I would love to have back, but I'm not guaranteeing him the seat. It's Yuki. I want to see how you and I operate together, how you and I communicate together. I believe he's going to be a leader of the team because that's his nature. He's an unbelievable person. But at the same time, nothing's given, and it's going to be a clean slate that way that, maybe a guy that was more of a defensive role last year, I might see something different in him. He might get more of an offensive role or whatever the case may be that way. And like I said, I'm excited for that way.